Hey, Joel. Hey, Claudio.
Hey,
Hey,
how's it going?
Good, good. How you guys? All right, guys. So we have a really special show here. I've been wanting to do for a little while. I'm a big guitar listener. I'm not a player like either one of these. Basically, I wanted this show is not going to hide, talk down, or disguise the importance of standout guitar playing in music. I think that's a real tragedy in our current pop music. I know we can seek out guitar playing, whether it's jazz, fusion, rock, metal, whatever it may be, on our own. But I just like let other people know that it's my favorite instrument out of all the instruments in the world. I can listen to instrumental guitar for days on end. I don't need voices. Like, I think the thing that's kind of destroyed pop music, in my opinion, is the pop music vocal shows like The Voice and American Idol. And they saw how many people want to see those shows. Then they kind of phased out the instrumentation. It's almost like a musicless form of music on the radio now, which really disappoints me. For me, guitar can be great in any type of music, any kind of setting. It can be in ambient and movie scores, shoegazing, classical, country, jazz, rock, metal, classic rock, thrash. It's all good. Hopefully today, with my two guests here, we can bring to the forefront some of the albums that we feel you guys should seek out. We'll tell you why we think they're the best 10 albums with extraordinary guitar playing. So first, let me I'll let our guest introduce himself from Chile, right? Santiago, Claudio Cordero.
yeah.
Tell
Thank
us a
you.
little about yourself, Claudio.
Well, I'm a guitar player since 13 years old. I born in 78, so I was in like 91 or 92 when I started. That was a great year for guitar playing. You know, after the shrapnel thing in the end of 80s and beginning the 90s, where the level in guitar playing was very, very high. You know,
Yes.
guys like Greg Howe coming out, and the Demons with the first things. Gilbert, it's like the level has a great shift in between 89 and 93. And I was like 13 years old in that moment, in that period, way to see the guitar playing. After that, well, I spent all my childhood and teen years practicing a lot. Then I studied music after my 18 years old. Then I started to work on this. All my life in playing rock, thanks to God. No, nothing of dancing music like here in Latin America. You know, you have to play a lot of salsa and cumbia and that stuff, and I didn't like that. And as a session player for Cast since 2006, right? And aside of this, working on my solo projects, I have 2 albums of my own music. To work with Ibanez in 2005 as an endorser, and this year I had the Marshall endorsement. So
Hey, I'm Joel Hoekstra. I play guitar for Whitesnake, Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and my own side project, Joel Hoekstra's 13, along with projects like Revolution Saints and Iconic.
What would you say is your number 10 best album with extraordinary guitar playing?
okay, first Greg Howe, Uncertain Terms. For me, when I listened to this album for the first time, I didn't know how he made all that. I didn't know what technique was. Very, very high skilled guitar playing for that moment, and for me, it was very shocking. The kind of album that you say, okay, I'm gonna leave the guitar. No. You have a balance, you know. Sometimes you have motivation, and sometimes you have like frustration. This was with the needle to the frustration point of view, but was very inspiring after all, because you have to learn all these, and the mind is going open.
All right, so I tried to compile a list of albums that inspired me on different levels, but were the ones that had the most inspiration in my career, because it's really hard to define like just 10 albums with great guitar playing on it. There's so many. So I just decided to pick the ones that probably kind of shaped who I am the most. So number 10, I put, I'm going to cheat a little bit, in Journey Greatest Hits, because just Neil Sean's taste of melody kind of combined with fiery runs and complementing the song. And, you know, that sort of was my transition out of being just a metalhead into more melodic kind of rock. So Journey Greatest Hits.
Okay, that's a great choice. I think he's got such a beautiful tone. I remember back in, I don't know if you saw this, either one of you guys, but I remember back in the 80s, probably early 80s, there was some sort of contest where they had a bunch of players kind of compete on a stage. It was on TV. It had, I think Alex Winter was there, Neil Sean was there. Sean ended up taking first place. because he had such a beautiful player. So anyway, awesome. My number 10, I'm going to mix it up. It's not strictly based on instrumental. Some of this is singing. Some of these guitars actually even sing themselves. But I'm going to go with, like you said, Joe, a little bit, the ones that affected me the most, that just stayed with me. First one for me is TNT, Tell No Tales. I just think that Ronnie Lee Tecro's, especially his rhythm guitar, has such an energy for me, like songs like, Everyone's a Star, 10,000 Lovers, As Far as the Eye Can See. There was something about his playing. It was a very distinct European sound. He was really fast with the picking notes and stuff. I just loved the way he made me feel. He made me feel very positive. And I'll give you one example, it's a little story. In 1987, when that album came out that year, I was trying to make my first feature film. I shot it when I was in the Army. I tried to do a 194-page script in 2 weeks, which is pretty much impossible. But I was too young to know that, should I say. So we tried. We went up to Oklahoma. I cast some high school kids from Lake Charles, Louisiana. 3 days into the shoot, I knew we were not going to pull it off. And I had to make a decision on what to do because I knew we were going to fail. And so I took this drive away from the cast and crew in the middle of Oklahoma where my friend lived. And I was actually very upset. And I remember I made the decision, do I quit directing because I think I can't do it? Or should I regroup and try to learn it better and get better at it? That's ultimately what I ended up doing. The TNT album was what I played in the car when I was coming back from fighting that turmoil inside. So it's kind of special for me. So TNT, Tell No Tales is my number 10. Number 9, Claudio.
It's gonna be Extreme, Pornography 2. Some of the best work of Nuno Betancourt. Maybe more like a rhythm player. He is the chops and the playing, the lead playing is fantastic. But his rhythm player for that time was very fresh and new, like a new thing. It was funk, but funk metal was great.
Excellent choice. What do you think, Joel?
Cool. Number 9 for me, I went with The Wall from Pink Floyd. Just David Gilmour again. This is kind of like from the same commentary as the Journey thing, where it's like the taste and the tone and the melody, but also with David Gilmour, just the psychedelia, man, like the creativity. So I just, I think as guitar players become more and more advanced, you go on Instagram and everybody's out doing the other with gymnastics. And it's kind of important to remember that there can also be the next David Gilmour who kind of comes along and just kind of inspires people with beautiful solos. I mean, like just the solos in Comfortably Numb are ridiculous. That first break and the ending break. So just in terms of taste and like construction and phrasing, so that's it for me there. Pink Floyd, The Wall.
Excellent. That's one of the best of all time, especially concept albums. That was brilliant. For me, my number 9 pick, I don't know about you guys, but I guess I sometimes go through phases where this guy's my favorite and it doesn't mean he drops, but someone else may come along that I love even more. I would say from the 80s, my favorite guitar player was George Lynch. He just had that great vibrato and his sound. And out of all his albums that he put out, whether it was solo or Lynch Mob, I'm choosing Dokken, Back for the Attack. When I think of 1988, I think of that as George Lynch's year. There was just so many songs off that album. I think it had 13, 14 songs. And, coming right out of the gate with Kiss of Death, with that really fast rhythm, heavy guitar, and other songs like Mr. Scary, Prisoner. I mean, I was listening to it again last night, studying for this, and just that tone he gets and the way he bends notes and sustains and the tremolo bar and then those runs he makes. I just think that album was really great. I think he was on top of the world right there. It's not a knock against any other player, but that was kind of like his year for me. Dream Warriors, that tone of the first notes that come in that was in Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I'm a horror film guy, so I love that mood and tone. He always had that darkness to him. Even on his solo, like Lynch Mob, like When Darkness Calls off the second Lynch Mob. I just love that George Lynch sound. So for me, Dokken, Back for the Attack is number 9.
That definitely was on my list of honorable mentions. I tried squeezing a Dokken record in there somewhere, man, but it's only 10, and because George Lynch was the same for me, but it was really hard to there's a pretty thick list of things that have had an impact on me, so it was hard to squeeze that in, but I wanted to. Yes. So honorable mentions, that, and I really wanted to get Boston in there too, the Boston record, just because it's underrated guitar playing on there, just in terms of how tasty all that stuff is, and just how they, great parts in songs, man,
And that clean distortion sound, I'd never heard anything like it back then, right?
And and for me, like anything from Alex Lifeson, I didn't get Alex in my top 10 either. I'm spoiling the surprise, but like, he deserves honorable mention, because it's like, where does it make it in? I mean, and the hard thing with Rush was like, what Rush album,
Yeah.
But he was a big one. But I'm going to name next around. I'm going to name one of his big influences, I think. So.
Okay, awesome. Okay, Claudio, so you're at number 8 now.
Do you know album of Bill Bruford, the One of a Kind album? Is like 78 or 77 or 79.
I'm not familiar.
Alan Holdsworth recorded the guitars of that album. You have like the first albums with Holdsworth was like One of a Kind of Bill Bruford. The other one is the UK album, the In the Dead of Night, I think, and the other is Tony Williams' Lifetime.
Oh yeah.
So in that time, that period of Holdsworth is like the human Holdsworth. He's playing like a human, very very melodic. You can follow every note. It's very easy listening, not like the post 89 where Alan became an alien,
Yeah, his like otherworldly playing, right?
Yes, it's maybe you need some time to digest all that information, but in the beginning was very easy to listen to. So this album, Bill Bruford, drummer from Yes, One of a Kind.
So number 8 went with Led Zeppelin, Houses of the Holy, just because I think Jimmy Page is great, parts player, writer. Anybody that ever tells me Jimmy Page isn't a good guitar player, I go tell them to listen to the Rain song and get back to me when they wrote something like that. It's just his use of open tunings and all his great riff writing. He's a master. He had to make it in there, and that's really, I think, Alex Lifeson. A lot of his style kind of came. A lot of these guys, a lot of the great guitar players took a lot from Jimmy Page. I mean, he really influenced a lot of the generation that I actually grew up with. Jimmy was a generation before, really. I mean, Led Zeppelin had kind of come and gone by the time I even started listening to rock. But luckily, I grew up in a city where there was lots of classic rock on the radio. So anyway, I like the diversity of Houses of the Holy. There's lots of different styles. You get to hear Jimmy play a lot of different stuff, not just like the blues stuff like in the early Zeppelin records. And so anyway, yeah, I really dig it, and especially the Rain song. That's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I definitely listened to Zeppelin a lot as a boy, especially from kids that were older than me that would play that. I'm glad I got a chance to hear it, because I still appreciate it to this day. It's some of the best stuff. My number 8 is a guy that could have been like 1. Obviously, we all know we can shift these anyway, and it still wouldn't matter. This guy, I first became a fan when he was in a band called Danger Danger, and that's Andy Timmons. I was such a fan of his playing in that band when he came out with his first solo album in 1994. Ear Ecstasy. I actually ordered it directly from Andy. Oh my God, he's got such diversity in his playing, and it seems like he always puts an importance on like the song first, even though he can shred and do all that other good stuff. It seems like he always puts importance on melody, and I always kind of refer to him myself personally as the groove master. Like all his stuff, you can tap your foot to, your head can beat to, whether he's playing like a country style or shredding or whatever it may be. Carpe Diem, Turn Away, Cry for You, Electric Gypsy, just astonishing guitar playing that really affected me emotionally, and that's why it's my number 8 pick.
I remember the Ibanez 90 anniversary, where the first time everyone here saw Andy Timmons playing Cry for You on that show, and he was completely unknown at that moment. But I remember that video was very important in the internet, because everyone was like, "Oh, Cry for You! Who's this guy? He's playing with a lot of emotion and control and feeling and everything." Is one of these guitar players from the beginning of the 90s. That year, between 90 and 93, is very high level.
No doubt. I completely agree with you on that.
Okay, my next choice is not an electric guitar album, but for me was very, very inspiring. And this is the Shakti Handful of Beauty. It is from, this project from John McLaughlin.
Oh, yeah.
With the violin player El Shankar and Zakir Hussain on tabla. Well, that album for me was very inspiring, not just because of the guitar playing that was completely awesome. The violin player, the way he chose the notes and the phrasing of this guy, for me was like something from beyond.
Wow!
Heaven.
Wow!
Very, very inspiring for me. All the Indian music and all this thing was.
Was that John Lupani on guitar or violin? John Lupani on violin? Is that it?
No, was an Indian guy. He's Shankar Leo.
Oh, okay.
Leo Shankar.
All right, cool.
Is the violin player. The guy plays with the violin like with the neck going like down.
Down. Wow.
Like there's some videos in the internet from the 70s with these guys playing. And this guy, the violin player, it's like the thing that Jeff Beck does with our harmonics when he plays Over the Rainbow, Somewhere Over the Rainbow with just harmonics, but the violin player using a lot of harmonics in the violin.
Wow.
Very high notes because, it's a shorter scale instrument, so the harmonics in here are very high. So it's great. It sounds very awesome.
I wanted to squeeze Trevor Rabin in there somewhere for my number 7 because I was a really big fan of the Trevor Rabin Yes stuff, like Big Generator and 90125. But I went with his solo album Can't Look Away, which is like a total hidden gem if people haven't listened to it. And he's he kind of comes from that David Gilmour school. You can tell he liked David Gilmour a lot in that his singing too is extraordinary. Like David Gilmour's got one of my favorite singing voices, and Trevor Rabin does too. They're two of my favorite singers. He's just brilliant in the studio with the production and sounds and parts and creativity. Production, his mind, he thinks like just an amazing producer. So the way he uses guitar as a tool in the studio, I think is just amazing. And so, yeah, I think Trevor's an unbelievable talent. So I wanted to get him in. So Can't Look Away. If people haven't checked out Can't Look Away, it's an awesome record.
And Joel, he transitioned into film scoring.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So successful that I think he subcontracts most of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. My next choice is actually, to me, almost like an echo of Andy Timmons. And I know that I've read, at least, that I believe Timmons is one of his favorite players. And this is a guitar player from Italy, and that's Marco Savoli. And I just think when I heard him the first time on Dream Theater's vocalist solo album, James Labrie put out a solo album in 2005. I think it was called Elements of Persuasion. I was like, who the hell is that playing guitar? Oh my God, the lead work and these big heavy riffs. I was like, oh my God, who that is? And it was this young guitar player from Italy, Marco Savoli. My choice for a 7 is Marco's second solo album. Came out 2012, about 10 years, I guess 11 years ago. It's called Remarkable. Oh my God, if you guys have never heard it, I mean, he does everything. I mean, incredibly. He'll be doing fusion 1 second, then it's a thrash metal lick. But somehow, the way he shapes it, it doesn't sound like it shouldn't be there. Like everything's molded together beautifully. He also is a guy that doesn't just try to hog the spotlight. You can hear when he's playing his notes, they're going with the drums or the bass. Oh my God, just songs like Remarkable, the way he kind of branches the leads into the rhythm patterns. They're like ear opening. They're like a blistering of avalanche of notes, but then the notes are connected with the keyboard. Oh my God, Heart to Sun. Not all of it's shred and not all of it's heavy. Some of it's very gentle. There's even acoustic, like Sun, B and C, The Forest, which to me is like, it sounds like a guitar. I look at the guitar in that song as like Sam Raimi's camera in Evil Dead, just zooming through the forest, going after those people in that horror film back in the early 80s. Gestures, Tears, Far From Me, Savior. So I just think that Marco he's got so much taste besides technique, and he blends it beautifully together. Probably one of the most unknown guitar players out there in a like a big way, but I think anyone that's heard him would be really impressed with him. Have either of you guys heard Marco play?
I haven't, no.
What do you think, Claudio?
He is a complete beast. I have the same impact from you. just the same impact when I listened the Elements of Persuasion album, and I was wrong because somebody gave me the album and told me this is the new Dream Theater album. This is the Octavarium. I listened to it, and it was James LaBrie on vocals, so it was very similar. My friends was telling like, oh, John Petrucci has this feeling again, how the images and words feeling. He was very melodic at that time and not very shredding like after. Marco was like in that very melodic, the note choices technically is amazing, the phrasing.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
And after, I started searching about him, and I got these videos from James LaBrie, like the reactions from he in the studio when Marco was tracking the tracks from Elements of Persuasion, and it's very funny. Like James was like the face absolutely melting down with the first
because Marco was so good, right?
Yeah, it's like the first take, and it's like the solo of the album. First take, second takes was completely amazing.
So let's go to number 6. Just keep it track of time.
The same like Joel. The same for Trevor Rabin. For me, it was amazing. I came from the progressive rock, Big Generator, and Talk was very influential albums from me, and the guitar playing of Trevor is amazing, and that album is great. I agree with you guys on that. Well, the next one is a very important album. I think it has some of the best playing in history, and it's the Jeff Beck Guitar Shop album. There's 2 songs in here, 2 rivers, and the other is Where Were You? Just this past week, he passed away, and it was very sad, and I was re-listening all his work, and when he plays this slow ballad with that level of control in the guitar, it was silly because I tried to play some of that, and was like 2 seconds, and okay, this is like 10 years from now. With the thumb, the index finger in the bar, 2 fingers on the volume, and everything is moving with every note. Is completely imitate is when you imitate something.
Yes.
The opposite to that is.
So he didn't imitate. He created, right?
Yeah, it's impossible to imitate him.
That was a great choice, Claudio, because especially the world losing his talents last week. That's a great choice. Joel, what do you have for number 6?
I'm going to go with Whitesnake, the '87 album, just because John Sykes is a beast, and that's his best work. That of all the '80s albums, vocal albums, probably the best standout guitar work of that entire generation of music. I mean, John really slayed it. I've been blessed to be at the studio and actually hear the tracks isolated and stuff like that at our studio, the band studio, and John's obviously amazing, and you could say his stuff with Blue Murder is really great too, but there's something about that '87 record that's just, it was like magic in a bottle.
I completely agree with you on that. I liked what he did even in Thin Lizzy, John, and like Thunder and Lightning and stuff. I love that stuff. But like you say, Joel, everything came together on that album. Everything. It was like one of those rare, never happen again type deals, and I can't argue with that. My number 6 album, I heard it when I was in Germany in the army. I was stationed in Kaiserslautern, West Germany. At that time, there was a German record store that had headphones where you could kind of test the albums, which it might have been the first time I ever saw that anyplace. And I think it was cassette. It wasn't CD at that point. But the way this started out, the aggressiveness right from the get-go, just grabbed me by the balls, so to speak. And that was Racer X Street Lethal with Paul Gilbert. I mean, he just came out with all guns blazing with those fast arpeggios and runs, and everything else that guy did just blew me away. The whole album. And what I think is so great about him as a guitarist, from, I know the term shredder is kind of a derogatory label, just like hair metal is derogatory towards those bands, and I don't mean to use it that way. But when you think of the guys that shred, one of the things I think that separated Paul Gilbert was it wasn't just the leads. He created those great hooky rhythms, whether they were heavy or softer than Mr. Big. I just love that album. Hotter Than Fire, Blowing Up the Radio, Getaway, On the Loose. I mean, he just rips it. It is a guy that's unrestrained. Let's take off the chains and let the guitar run wild. And for me, Street Lethal is just it's a masterpiece of lead guitar playing and heavy riffs.
Awesome. The other day, reading a lot and seeing some videos about the Jose Arredondo mods Marshalls from in between Van Halen and that. And I read in there that John Sykes was using one of those for the 1987 album. Was a Marshall model, like a Jose Arredondo model amp. You know that mod, on the story about.
No, but I know that they were, at least as far as David Coverdale has told me, that they were working on his sound and having some trouble getting the right sound. And Bob Rock was in the hallway when David went out, and he brought Bob into the studio, and Bob kind of went here, and Bob was really kind of unsung hero of putting together that tone for that record.
That tone is game changer. Absolutely, there's nothing like that in that year, or in maybe years later.
Yeah.
Because the next album was the Slip of the Tongue one, and I think Steve has a very big shoes to fill in.
Yeah, Steve Vai tried to fill John Sykes' shoes, right?
Yeah, the 1987 shoes, because it's the sound of that album, the riffs, the riffing, the soloing, everything.
Yeah, it was a great fit, great combination.
It's from it's a Swedish guitar player. This one is Mattias Eklund. It's maybe new, and that
Free
road,
Kitchen, right? Free Kitchen,
yeah.
Right?
But this album is The Road Less Traveled, and he does this everything with the hands, and the guy sounds like a whammy guitar. For me, it was very shocking, and I stole some things from him. Like this one, no? That kind of thing. So that one, Matthias.
What's your 5, Joel?
So I went with a couple guys that maybe you guys haven't heard of as well, but Garsed and Helmrich, Brett Garsed and TJ Helmrich with their first album, Quid Pro Quo. The main reason is I was lucky enough as a kid to have TJ Helmrich be my second guitar teacher. So I was about like 12 or 13 years old. This was before he was just starting out doing all the 8-finger stuff. He kind of taught me leads, how to bend, the theory. Because he was working so hard on the 8-finger techniques, had me work on that as a young kid. I think probably so he could practice during my lesson, so. But then as it turned out, years passed, we stayed friends, and I went to LA, and he had, he was teaching at GIT at this point, and I was going to GIT, and he had made friends with the guitar player in Nelson, who was kind of like, at that time, they had a #1 hit on the radio, it's like, it was pre-grunge. And that was Brett Garsed. So he made friends with Brett. So here I was, this kid, with no money at all. Didn't have a car, didn't even have a bed, living in LA. And I was friends with this amazing guitarist who was done, #1 hit on the radio at the time. And we would jam, and Brett and TJ and I hung many a nights and played guitar for hours on end. So they had a big influence on me beyond the album, like just as two guitarists, TJ being my teacher, and then Brett also just being a mentor and whatnot. So I definitely wanted to include them. So they had Quid Pro Quo and then Exempt, and then they had a very kind of experimental one where TJ sang called Under the Lash of Gravity that people could check out. So all 3 of those are kind of hidden gems.
Nice. I'm aware of the name. I heard one of the albums, but was one of them from Australia?
Brett's from Australia.
Yeah.
He's got, quite the name because he played for John Farnham down there, who's, an enormous pop star in Australia. And so Brett kind of went from, living in a remote village to playing for 25,000 people a night with John Farnham. I mean, he literally just blew up overnight, They grabbed him and said, holy cow, this kid's amazing, because he kind of grew up out in the middle of nowhere, just playing a lot of guitar. And, I think he was a combination of rock and then Alan Holdsworth, just kind of like, maybe a hard rock version of what Alan was doing. So nice.
My number 5 album is actually Michael Romeo, War of the Worlds Part 2. Mike's the guitarist, founder of Symphony X. Mike's actually a very good friend of mine. We started working together about 20 years ago. I had a movie called Hair of the Dog, which I reached out to him for one of the Symphony X songs to see if we could license in the movie. We did get the permission. And then he said, could I make something for the movie as well? So he did this acoustic guitar stuff. It was really beautiful. It was not shredding. It was really cool. We just became friends. And in fact, Mike is scoring my next movie. And none of it's really, well, some of it might be guitar, but most of it's orchestra. And the thing I think that's separates Mike, in terms of different than other players, is he probably loves John Williams and Hans Zimmer as much as he loves Yngwie Malmsteen and, Dimebag Darrell. I mean, this is a guy who would like to make music like E.T. or Jaws, just like he would to play like, Yngwie. Yeah. So Mike's latest album, I think it's got some incredible guitar stuff on it. It's all rooted to more of a band structure. He's got singing, so it's not just instrumental. I'm sure you guys know, but some of the stuff he does there, whether it be the big chunky riffs to the crazy, insane, supersonic, lead work. I just think he's a brilliant player. I like him as a person, and we're working together on a movie. So I got to get Mike in here because he's, in my opinion, he's one of the best out there.
Yeah, he's amazing for sure. All right, number 4.
Number 4.
And it's a great composer too. Joe Satriani, Crystal Planet. I know everyone is gonna say Extremist, but for me it was Crystal Planet. It's the sound of the album, the songs. If I have to put all the songs in the balance, because I like it more. So that one, Crystal Planet from Joe Satriani.
Good choice.
So yeah, shout out to a couple guys that, oddly enough, I mean, Joe Satriani was definitely a huge love when I was a kid, and so was Steve Morse, and neither one of them made my list. But if I were to pick, I'd go with Surfing with the Alien or Not of This Earth made the biggest impact. I had Not of This Earth on vinyl. Somebody gave me that and said, you got to check this guy out. And with Steve Morse, it would be Steve Morse Band, The Introduction. I loved that record and wore it out. Or High Tension Wires, all the orchestration. So apologies to those guys, with Boss. I mean, it was just really hard to get everybody in that had an impact on me. But I got to go with Van Halen 1, just because I think it was a game changer in rock in terms of technique and, just those landmark moments that happened that, you hear when you're a kid where you go, you hear Eruption for the first time and you think, what is that? Like, how's that? That can't be real, it sounds computer generated or something. Of course, we didn't have computers back then. But, anyway, but we were, it just, everybody was blown away on that game.
I'm glad you chose that, Joel, because I didn't put it in mine, and not because I wouldn't have, but I think I'm glad somebody did, because it was like you guys say, it's a game changer. And when I think of that album, by the way, I'm 57, right? So I bought that when it came out as a kid. I was 13 in 78. So I did buy it. Atomic Punk. I mean, just all that rhythm, that fast.
Yeah, great riffing and song, everything was a cool song. And, that band period just had great chemistry. The early David Lee Roth was out of his mind. We all loved him. And, just amazing stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, and really Alex Van Halen too. I always think Alex Van Halen is really underrated. He just had his own sound and style. And, Michael Anthony was the perfect complement to everybody involved. It was just, amazing band. But Eddie was, the innovator. And, so anyway, he needed to be in the top 10 just because of that.
Yeah, thank God you put him there. My next guy, I think he might be in my opinion, on a public scale of, pop music and radio music, most people probably don't know who this guy is. I know all players will, but to me, he's maybe the most underrated guitar player of all time, and the man could sing as well. And that's Gary Moore. Gary Moore, I just think he was, oh my God, he could do anything. He could play blues, as we all know, and he could play heavy rock as well. I was fortunate enough to see him play live in 1985 on his Run for Cover album, and he was on fire. Oh my God, he was just coming off the album I chose before that, which was Victims of the Future. And I just took that for some of the legendary songs that he did on that, whether it be Victims of the Future, Shapes of Things, which by the way, I didn't know was a Yardbirds remake. That I didn't know, but that was actually a Yardbirds song. And Murder in the Skies, which was about that plane being shot down by the Soviet Union in 1983, which is, I guess, the year he was recording it. Oh my God, I just think he's such a great player, and he could kill it on guitar. And He did something I've never seen anyone ever do live in my history of a heavy metal hard rock guy. Second song on that performance, he took his shirt off, and you don't think of Gary Moore as like a great looking guy or whatever. He took his shirt off and he played like a 15-minute solo in between shapes and things, and I think Murder in Disguise, and it just blew me away. So Gary Moore, Victims of the Future, 84.
I had to take the Run for Cover album out because it was like the 11th one. But okay, my next one is the Yngwie Malmsteen Rising Force, of course, game changer. Everything I could say.
He was that next step from Eddie. Then to me it was Yngwie. That next game breaker, right?
And the compositions. There's this song, the Icarus Dream Suite.
Yeah.
Opus 5. That one.
Yeah.
The arrangements and all the like progressive rhythm in between is great for that year, for that period of time. It was very game changer, and the playing.
So I went with Steve Vai, Passion and Warfare, just because Steve's creativity and his execution, that just was a special album. I think I was probably I want to say I was 18, 19 years old when that came out. And that just really kind of opened my mind to what was possible on an instrumental record. Just all the creativity with having the little vocal setups for each song, and he just kind of pushed the boundaries as an artist of what it was to make an instrumental album. So that had a big impact on me. I listened to that over and over and over and over. So that was a big one for me.
I can certainly see why. I loved it, have it just as well. My number 3 is Eric Johnson, Via Musicom. I just think that he's, the Austin, Texas perfectionist. I know that's what he's known as. He's just like a diamond in the rough. He doesn't play like anybody else. He's got a sound that's just so special and unique. And it's not the technique, even though the guy's got loads of technique. I mean, when you think of songs like Desert Rose and Highland Drums and Trademark and Nothing Can Keep Me From You, he obviously can sing just like Gary Moore did. I just think he's exquisite, super clean, very sensitive, very special guitar player.
Okay, my
number 2.
Okay, same as Joel, Passion and Warfare album. I had for number 2 in the list. Of course, production skills in that album. There's guitar music oriented in that time, and in the 90s, the sound is still today. It's still sounding great. It's like a temporary, sounding like actual now. The Love Secrets, the last song, it's a very experimental thing with loops and things. Still sounding.
Him pulling Jimi Hendrix into the 80s was remarkable, because in the 80s nobody wanted anything to do with Hendrix. So it's the fact that he was kind of pulling in some of those psychedelic aspects. And the recording. So it's funny because I'm going to swap with you for my number 2, because I went with Yngwie Malmsteen, Rising Force. When Rising Force came out, that changed everything, man. And actually, it was just before that, you started to hear him. Like the first I heard Yngwie was the live Alcatraz record, and that was like, holy crap. But then, when his first album came out, that was really when you got to listen to like him in his element and not kind of just trying to cram it into these Alcatraz songs. So that was a huge record, totally changed the game. So, Yngwie still is the only guy to really play that style with loose phrasing, not rigid. He can improvise with it. His vibrato, his tone is so signature. He changed the whole landscape of what people needed to practice and sound like. And, there's just been a million imitators since, I mean, that speaks for itself. These are the guys that kind of changed the whole game. So he changed it with that record.
I completely agree with you, and obviously Claudio does as well. Absolutely. My number 2 is Joe Satriani, Flying in a Blue Dream. He's got so many great albums, we all know that, but that album to me has so much diversity, whether you're talking about where he's singing on I Believe, or Strange, or Big Bad Moon, slide guitar, he's got the Mr. Potato Head groove thing, oh my God, it's just a ride, can't slow down. I think there's something also with that producer he worked with, John Cronenberg. There was a magic between those two guys that I don't know if it's always the same since then, but the albums they made together was very special for me. So Flying in a Blue Dream is my number 2.
Okay, my number 1. This one is maybe not very popular, but for me, it has the best guitar playing I ever heard. This is an Alan Holdsworth album. This is the Warden Cliff Tower. And the first song, 5 to 10, I think that is the pinnacle of guitar playing for me, that one.
Okay.
Okay, so I had to kind of go contrarian with the reasoning for number 1. It's all about the inspiration, because what made me want to start was AC/DC Back in Black and Angus Young. So I'm not necessarily coming from a place of like, you know, Angus's innovation or whatnot, but I think that, you know, just in terms of what they did for rock and roll, I think he's the greatest rock and roll showman to ever set foot on a stage. He obviously came from the Chuck Berry school, but you've never, if you think about all the years, you've never seen 1 second of him taking it easy on stage, which is remarkable. If you think about all the world tours and all the aches and pains and all the bad travel that must have occurred, you know, there's never been 1 minute of him just standing there going like, oh, just get me through this gig. You know, he's always like on 10 as far as being inspired and putting on a show. And I think that album was recorded amazing songs and amazing pocket in his playing. Great use of bringing in like the traditional blues style to rock and roll, and it's what made me play guitar. So I mean, it's got to be number 1 for me, because it's what inspired me to pick up the guitar.
Awesome. And I'll just finish out my number 1 choice. It's John Petrucci, his latest solo album from Dream Theater. I'm a huge fan of Dream Theater. They became my favorite band in '92. I've been listening to them ever since. Terminal Velocity, his 2020 album. I just saw him perform it live 2 months ago in November on his last date of the entire tour, his first ever solo tour in his hometown. Well, basically his hometown of Patchogue. He's from Kings Park. Oh my God, The Oddfather, Gemini, Out of the Blue, Glassy Eyed Zombies. You know, John's just, you know, he's got everything going. He can play anything. And it's not just the fast leads. You know, he'll slow down, he'll play soft. I just love that album. You know, Mike Portman plays drums on it, and Dixie Drake's bassist is the bassist. So it's a great album, and I think it's John's latest and its greatest so far.
Cool. I just met him for the first time not too long ago. It's funny. It took forever to cross paths with him. I was really surprised we hadn't, but we were on the same flight, so we were waiting, and I decided he looks a little like intimidating. I was a little scared to say hey, you know? But then I was glad I did, because I kind of summoned the courage. I thought, come on, man, just go say hi to him, you know? And so I did, and then he was the nicest guy in the world, you know? And then we boarded the flight, and Debbie Gibson was on the flight, too. So we had the bizarre flight in the world.
That's awesome.
Petrucci and Debbie Gibson. So,
That's awesome. Well, I know you got to run, Joel, and I appreciate all your time, both of you, Claudio. It's been fantastic. Thank you guys for doing what you guys do individually as guitar players. I'm a huge fan of both you guys, and I can't thank you enough.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Okay, take care, guys. You have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.